Attorney General William Barr, who has been a steadfast ally of the president's over the course of about half of the president's term, decided he's stepping down. The president sent out a pretty conciliatory tweet in support of Attorney General Barr's term in office. But there were reports coming out over the past month since the election that Attorney General Barr was considering stepping down, and I think ultimately he made the decision right before the Christmas holiday.
So, Alex, despite the president's claims, ongoing claims of fraud, a rigged election, the Electoral College has voted and that's it. That's done.
Well, Joe Biden is the president-elect. He's going to be the 46th president of the United States. Today was another step in that process. Now, usually the day that the Electoral College votes is a pretty mundane, symbolic day here in the U.S., and a lot of people actually don't even pay attention to it. But what happened today was the state electors in each of the 50 states and the territories came together and they cast their ballot for either President Trump or President-elect Biden. Most states, basically, the way they do it is based on their popular vote, how the people vote. The electors are bound to vote for whomever the people vote for. There's a couple of interesting exceptions in there. But, Kieran, it's just another step in the direction that we've been expecting since, a few days after the presidential election on November 3rd. And that's that Vice President or President-elect Biden has won this election. And regardless of the dozens and dozens of lawsuits that President Trump and his team have filed, most of which, actually all except one, have failed, including a couple before the Supreme Court in the past week or so. It's really brought the focus onto days like this that normally Americans don't pay attention to, and it's a civics lesson for the entire country. We're seeing the process play out. So from here, the electors have done everything they can. They've cast their ballots as of today, with President-elect Biden having 306 electoral votes. And now those votes will be sent to the U.S. Congress, who in early January will tally them up with Vice President Pence overseeing the process.
There have been heated negotiations within Congress about a COVID stimulus package. Has Congress landed a deal?
Congress has not landed the deal. There are currently a couple packages being considered. One by a bipartisan group of senators who have come together and cobbled together a $908 billion package, which doesn't satisfy everyone, but it gets a decent amount of state and local money pulled together, along with liability protection extensions. But there's the ultimate package that is going to be the one that will get across the finish line is the one between Majority Leader Mitch McConnell in the Senate and Speaker Pelosi. All legislation must flow through them. So I think we're going to see a combination of those two packages. And one thing is clear, though. COVID in the United States is terrible. I've spoken with some friends in Canberra, in Melbourne, and Sydney, and it seems like life is normal in most cases, with the exception of having to show your QR code at a bar or restaurant. Here, we're now today passing the tragic 300,000 person mark of Americans that have lost their lives as a result of this virus. 200 hospitals across the U.S. are at 100% capacity. Another third are at 90% capacity. And the vaccine could not come soon enough. So the developments in the past few days have been positive.
Yeah, so on that issue, the rollout of the vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, this is a massive, massive exercise, isn't it?
It is. It will be a massive exercise, Kieran, and it's extremely important that we get this right for a multitude of reasons. But the U.S. has tons of experience disseminating flu vaccine every year in conjunction with DOD, in conjunction with state health facilities and the FDA and the CDC. So I'm confident that we're going to be able, on the logistics side, be able to get this done. Companies like FedEx, companies like UPS are cold storing and cold shipping these vaccines around the country to facilities where they will be administered. And I'm sure you saw today that the first vaccines were administered, in many cases to first responders, firefighters, police officers, and the elderly. So it's extremely important that we get this right, and I think we're heading in the right direction. With that being said, Dr. Fauci said today that as long as an American doesn't have some sort of pre-existing or underlying health condition, they're most likely going to be able to be vaccinated by late March or early April. That's still 4.5 months away. So Americans are going to have to continue social distancing and wearing masks through the winter, and hopefully, increasingly, we can get this thing tied up by midsummer.
Alex, you would have seen the worsening trade situation between Australia and China. What's been said by leaders, both President-elect Biden and Donald Trump, if anything, on this issue between Australia and China?
Well, Kieran, I did see that Trade Minister Simon Birmingham did come out and indicate that he found that the coal tariffs were discriminatory. And whether it's coal or whether it's the 212% tariffs that are on Australian wine going into China right now, it's clear that China is attempting to bully Australia in many senses. And it is the talk around Washington. Australia is really the canary in the coal mine, and not only in Washington, but in Five Eyes nations around the world, as well as in Western allies throughout the Pacific. We see this sort of action from China as being discriminatory and retaliatory for a couple of things that happened earlier in the year. What President-elect Biden has said is on the phone call with Prime Minister Scott Morrison, indicated that the U.S. is going to be with Australia side by side and going to help Australia negotiate and stand firm in the Pacific realm and when dealing with China for the long haul. We've always been there. And even last week, interestingly, we saw President-elect Biden indicate that he's not going to let up on Trump's tariffs on Chinese products and services coming into the U.S. That Trump has imposed over the past 4 years on China. He's not going to do that right away. It's going to be a wait and see situation. But in the past week, we've seen the U.S. revoke or potentially hold visas for Chinese Communist Party members attempting to come into the U.S. We've seen an additional round of blacklisting of Australian companies here from our Commerce Department, and we've seen the elimination of cultural exchanges. A positive sign that I saw come out of the President-elect Biden's transition was that incoming National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan tweeted out in support of Australia. While he did not mention China, I think we all knew what it was in regards to. It was about a week and a half ago as this trade dispute was heating up. So regardless of party, one of the most bipartisan issues in Washington right now is a mutual antipathy towards China. And if you're on the far right, there are abuses that you don't appreciate. If you're on the far left, there's abuses that you don't appreciate. So it's really bringing the country together in a sense. And about 70% of Americans have an unfavorable view of China.
One area where Australia and the incoming Biden administration might not be on the same page is climate change. Given the recent appointments from Joe Biden, what do you read as being his priorities, particularly when it comes to that issue of climate change, where he's vowed to sign back onto the Paris Agreement?
Well, it's hard to read into energy and climate change too much because President-elect Biden has made really one appointment in relation to climate change and energy, and that's the appointment of former Secretary John Kerry to serve as an international climate envoy for the incoming administration. But what that does say to the world and to Australia and China is that the administration is going to take this seriously. Secretary Kerry is going to have in that role a seat at the National Security Council. So right there, that tells you that the Biden administration not only views climate change as a moral crisis and an economic crisis even more so, but it's a national security crisis. So in the coming weeks and in the coming month, what we're going to see is President-elect Biden's going to be appointing a range of positions, whether it's administrator of the Environmental Protection Administration, or whether it's the Department of Energy, Department of Interior, or the White House Council on Environmental Quality. So these are all roles that will have a hand in energy and climate policymaking, and they'll all tell us a different thing. But right now, what the appointments tell us from the Biden transition is that he's going to take the issue seriously. And when it comes to U.S.-Australia relations on the issue, I don't think there are going to be major issues. We have a bunch of tasks ahead of us, and I think one of them is climate change, and we've already discussed the other one.